we're certainly on track to keep our rebuild efforts moving as quickly as possible.
There will be 85 seconds of silence in paradise tomorrow morning to remember those who died. Steve Clausen, California News.
You check things all the time, like your email every 10 seconds, or your ex's Instagram. But what about checking something as important as your credit? Well, Discover makes it quick, easy, and best of all, free. Discover is now offering FICO credit scores to everyone for free, even if you're not a customer. And checking your score won't hurt your credit. We call it the Discover Credit Scorecard. And once you know your score, you should check to see if your current credit card is the best fit for you. Check your credit, compare your card. Go to discover.com/credit scorecard. Limitations apply.
A heart in my tasty Honey Nut Cheerios? Cereal, you trying to tell me you love me?
Actually, it's reminding you that it can help lower cholesterol as part of a heart-healthy diet.
Wait! They can help lower cholesterol? I've been so focused on the sweet, tasty taste that I completely forgot. Now I'm in love.
Learn more about making Honey Nut Cheerios part of your heart-healthy lifestyle by picking up a box at your local grocery store.
NBC News Radio, I'm Brian Shook. Former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg is reportedly going to jump into the Democratic presidential race. The billionaire businessman is planning to file for Alabama's Democratic primary. Alabama's November 8th primary filing deadline is the first in the country. Bloomberg has previously toyed with the idea of launching a presidential run. One of VP Mike Pence's aides who listened to President Trump's phone call with Ukraine's president reportedly thought the discussion was unusual. Jennifer Williams, who serves as Pence's advisor on Europe and Russia, testified in the House impeachment inquiry Thursday. CNN reports Williams told lawmakers the July conversation was political and did not have the usual tone of a diplomatic call. A mother and her two children are being buried together just as they died together in Mexico's massacre this week.
Soldiers stood guard Thursday as 3 coffins were carried past 500 mourners in a small Mormon settlement near the Arizona border. Community members used shovels to dig one large grave. It was the first funeral since Monday's ambush by drug cartels. In all, 3 mothers and their children, including twin babies, were gunned down. 8 other children survived. Tom Roberts, NBC News Radio.
The climate change trial against ExxonMobil Company is wrapping up in New York City. The state of New York filed the lawsuit last year saying Exxon hid the true costs of combating climate change from investors. In closing arguments, the Attorney General of New York said Exxon lied about evaluating the impact of climate regulations. The victims of a mass murder in Thousand Oaks, California are being remembered 1 year later. Captain Eric Buschow from the Ventura County Sheriff's Department tells reporters a new healing garden is a welcome sight.
And this is to honor the memories of the 12 people who were taken from us last November at the borderline.
The shooting took place November 7th in a popular bar and left many others injured. You're listening to the latest from NBC News Radio.
Oh, I wish I was an Oscar Mayer wiener. Hey, this Friday it's TGIF. Thank God it's Fry Dog. This Friday, November 8th, it's Fry Dog at the Broadcast Media Services Center, home of KCAA, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, 1050 AM, and home to our cousin radio station, KQLH 92.5. Because it's Fry Dog. When the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile rolls into our radio station parking lot, we're across the street from Big Lots and Redlands on Industrial Park Avenue. The Wienermobile will be here. Be a great American hot dogger. Join us and Oscar Mayer with their famous Wienermobile. Get your picture with this larger-than-life famous American pop culture icon. Have some fun from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. and get a wiener whistle and all kinds of other prizes, tasty treats, and of course, a free hot dog lunch while supplies last from KCAA and KQLH. Thank God it's Fry Dog. Get your wiener whistle.
Are you ready for a new experience? To see life from another point of view? New hope, new expression, new joy. This is your radio hour. Welcome to Viewpoint with Father John.
And welcome. You're tuned to KCAA Radio, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, or on the World Wide Web at kcaaradio.com. This is Viewpoint with Father John, and I am your host, Father John Reed. By the way, you can follow this show on both Instagram and Facebook. Just go to Viewpoint with Father John. And, follow us on that because it's kind of fun to put emails back and forth. And about once a week or so, I usually put a inspirational video up on Instagram. But we'd love to have you as part of the family. It's been going pretty good, and so please join us there. All of God's children are endowed with extraordinary purpose and ability. I'm on a quest to help as many as possible in fully realizing their divinely inspired potential. Disposing a false narrative and embracing genuineness inspires clarity of purpose. My role is to help overcome self-imposed limitations in realizing one's spiritual potential. And folks, I want to tell you about a great place in the city of Claremont called Claremont Pharmacy on the corner of Indian Hill Boulevard and Arrow Highway, owned by Dr. Nikki Ho. If you really want to get your prescriptions in order, that's the place to go. They handle all my prescriptions, and I'll tell you what, since I took my diabetic medications over there, my A1C has been great. Tell Dr. Nikki that Father John sent you. You'll be really glad you went over there. And also, I want to remind you that this is a listener-supported program, so please go to viewpointwithfatherjohn.com, click on the support button, and give whatever you can. And for those of you who've been contributing on a regular basis, thank you. You're the ones keeping us on the air. And tonight, my guest is a dear friend of mine, and we had him on the show about a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
A dear good friend of mine, Mr. Jesse Ruiz. He is the owner of Personal Funeral Planning.
Correct.
And he's been in the business for a lot of years. He's also served in the Marine Corps. The only former Marine is a dead Marine. I know. I didn't
That's
do
right.
it. I didn't do it. He has served proudly and defended his country. He has been in battle zones in Afghanistan.
Yes.
Yes, that's correct.
Mm-hmm.
And so welcome to the show. Glad to have you on.
Thank you, Father. Happy to be here once again. So thank you so much for allowing us to be here.
No, it's a privilege. It's ours. And what I want to talk about a little bit last time you were here, we talked a little bit about what are the important things to know should somebody die. What do you do? Do you call the paramedics? Do you call a funeral home right away? Or what should people know if someone dies at home?
That's actually an excellent question, and one that a lot of people don't know what to do when they're in that situation. Number one, it really depends on where your loved one is at that point. If your loved one is at home under hospice care,
right,
the first thing you do is call your hospice provider, your hospice nurse.
Good.
Once that nurse gets there, they will pronounce your loved one deceased. At that point, then you notify them that you've selected a funeral home of your choice. Then at that point, they will contact the funeral home.
Preferably,
yes, preferably our place. If
Personal funeral planning.
Yeah, correct. So once that happens, the nurse will make contact with the funeral home. We do have to get some vital information at that point from the hospice nurse, their phone number, the doctor who's going to be signing the cause of death, etc. We've had families also that will say, you know what, we want to stay with our loved one for the next hour, 2-3 hours. And, you know, we let them. We'll just tell them, hey, just let us know when you're ready, and we will kindly and hopefully go to your home and bring your loved one into our care.
You know, let's spend a moment on that point because that's very important. I've been there because I served as a hospice chaplain for a long time.
Yes.
And good love, care, kindness, and consideration are earmarks of a good funeral director. And that's why I'm a little bit hesitant. I know I do funerals for a lot of people, but one reason and I'm not trying to make a selling point here, it's just a personal opinion, but I'm right. Why I like smaller establishments, personally owned establishments, is because you're not going into a place where it's one service after another. You're going into a place where each one is taken care of personally.
Yes.
Each one matters. Would that be a correct statement?
Absolutely. 1,000%, yes.
Now, if they're not on hospice and they haven't been seen by a doctor within 90 days to 6 months, that's a coroner's case, correct?
Correct, yes.
And you want to explain that a little bit?
Yeah. So let's say you're at home, your loved one just, faints, passes away. You will call 911 immediately, obviously. The ambulance, obviously, they'll get there. They will take your loved one to the hospital. At that point, a decision will be made whether it's a coroner's case or not. Even backtracking a little bit, if they get there and they see that, something's off, they will call the coroners directly, and the coroners will take over at that point.
I'm going to ask a very sensitive question. But it is a very important question because this year I've dealt with it more than any other year in past. You come home and you find that they have died by suicide. What happens?
That's a coroner's case, absolutely.
So you call the police?
You call 911. 911, call the police. That will immediately, that's a immediate coroner's case, yes. Any type of homicide, suicide is 100% coroner's case.
One of the reasons I wanted to mention that is because sometimes families don't understand that and they think it's your fault when it's not. You have no rights in that.
Exactly.
That is the state law, and so your hands are tied.
Yes.
And so, folks, if you're in that situation, first of all, our hearts go out to you.
Yes,
And I've known
absolutely.
Jesse close to 20 years, and I can tell you he's a very compassionate man. So I know his heart goes out to you. We've worked
Yes.
together a lot. And so when that's happening, you got a lot of emotions going through you and a lot of anger, and that's okay.
Yes.
You're going to be mad for a while at things that don't even make sense. It's just part of grief. But when it's a coroner's case, it's not because the funeral home is trying to be difficult. It's because this is what the state law requires.
Exactly. Our hands are tied basically at that point. They do have to do their own investigation. On average, a coroner's case will take about a week and a half to 2 weeks for them to release their loved one to the funeral home. Sometimes longer.
I was going to say, I've seen it longer than that.
Yeah. But it is, it's for the benefit not only of the deceased, but to the family to find out, okay, why did this person die? If
Sure.
there's a question and doubt. Absolutely.
Absolutely. What is some important information that the family should have on hand if it's an expected death?
If it's an expected death, the person's under hospice care. The two key points that we need for the death certificate or vital information would be the person's Social Security number.
Okay.
A lot of people don't know it, but we definitely need that. The second part to the vitals or death certificate would be the parents' names and the mother's maiden and last name and where they were born.
Oh, that's
those
good
are key. Yeah, those are key elements that we struggle sometimes from families that they'll be calling around different family members to find out where grandma was born or her maiden and last name. But those three pieces of information are the crucial ones that families are taken back.
Right.
But that's definitely and if they knew the wishes of their loved one, what they wanted to do, whether it be a cremation or a traditional service, that would be very helpful as well.
You're leading right into my next question. Great minds think alike, but we're getting along anyhow. And so there is a whole different set of laws
Yes.
surrounding cremation.
Yes.
You can't just go in and say, I want to cremate my loved one.
No.
Particularly if there's not an advance directive.
Exactly.
And if there's children involved and it's from a different marriage, the children have rights in this, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
You want to talk about that for just a little bit?
That falls
so
back.
I don't screw it up.
Thanks for putting me on the hot seat. No.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm talking about cremation. Yeah. That's the real hot seat.
This all falls back to the 7100 legal person or the legal next of kin. So when we get the initial call, we need to find out who is the legal next of kin.
Right.
Now, we actually follow a chart mandated by the state. So if the decedent by themselves came into the funeral home, signed all the authorizations, they said, okay, this is exactly what I want. By law, we have to follow their instructions.
Oh, okay. That's good to know.
Number two would be an agent with a healthcare directive, a power of attorney. That's number two.
Now, it could just be power of attorney, power of attorney, or does it have to be a durable?
A durable power of attorney for healthcare.
Okay.
Yes.
I just want to make sure.
Yes, that would be number two. Number three then would be the spouse.
I was always taught number two was something else, but go ahead.
No, that's it. It's self, healthcare directive, spouse. If there is no spouse, then it falls back to the children. If there's no children, then it falls back to the parents.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's quite a bit.
Where it gets tricky is down to the children. Let's say the person or the decedent had 6 children. You got to get the majority to come together to what we're going to do, or all. So
that would be Greg, Marcia, Cindy, Bobby, and the other rest of Brady Bunch. The 6 kids.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Majority or all 6. Yeah. And that's where it gets tricky, because you know, different people think differently, and in fact, we just had a family where there was five children, and we had to get 3 to come together to in fact to do a burial, or if we're going to do a shipment to Mexico, where it was tough, but ultimately it all came together, and everything worked out well. So, but
cool, that's great. Another thing that a lot of times they need, if the person's a veteran, they need a DD 214, which is the honorable dismissal or discharge.
Yes,
and so when the funeral director asks you for that, they're not trying to be difficult. Particularly if you want to be at a national cemetery, you can't be buried without a proper DD 214. And technically to have a flag, even if you're not being, if you have the DD 214 showing honorable service, I believe it's the post office provides a flag.
Correct. Yes, we picked it up from,
Wow.
And
I knew that, huh?
And I'm glad you touched on that too. I mean, you know, we have Veterans Day coming up on Monday, so I want to thank you for your service.
Thank you for yours.
No, you're welcome. And touching back on DD 214s, or that's an extremely important document for the funeral home to put together the honors for the veteran, to get them interred at Riverside National or any other local national cemetery. We need that document.
Right.
Yeah.
And folks, I want to make it real clear, because not everybody knows this. There's a difference between the National Cemetery, that's the military cemetery, and a veterans section in a private cemetery. They're two different things, and so that's why at Riverside National, we'll use that one for an example because it's near here.
Close, sure.
There's not a charge for the place, for the opening and closing. If you're at a private cemetery, there's a charge for all that.
Yes.
It's a private cemetery. It's just that section is reserved only for people in the military.
Correct.
They have no government association.
Correct.
Excuse me. Sorry.
Now, if you are interred in a public cemetery, you will get the headstone free of charge from the VA.
Now that part I didn't know, so that's good. That can save quite a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Those things are very expensive.
Yes, they are.
Well, good deal. And families I used to tell at my parish, it's good to have a list of important numbers by the phone or on a nightstand or someplace where you know where it is. For if someone does die, you know who to go down the list to let know, including if you already have a pre-need at a funeral home, to have that phone number there so that there's no guessing. When we come back from the break, we're going to talk a little bit about pre-need planning opposed to what's called at-need. Because there's some important information there. And again, this isn't to sell anybody anything. This is important information. Some of you who have gone through this process, you realize it's difficult enough when somebody dies. Mm-hmm. But if there's nothing in place, it makes the crisis even worse. And families I deal with all the time, they often say to me, I had no idea it was so difficult. It's one of the most difficult things you ever do to put a funeral together for someone you love.
Absolutely.
Because it's not just logic. You're going through the range of emotions. And sometimes you're okay, sometimes you're not.
Yep.
And you don't have a choice of when that's going to be.
Yes.
So when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about pre-need. My guest this evening is my dear friend, Mr. Jesse Ruiz of Personal Funeral Planning. And you're listening to Viewpoint with Father John. We'll be back in 2 and 2.
KCAA Loma Linda, 1050 AM, K292 FQ Riverside, and K293 CF Moreno Valley.
The loss of a loved one is one of the most challenging experiences in a person's life. It's hard to know where to turn to make your loved one's final arrangements. Jesse Ruiz at Personal Funeral Planning in Ontario will treat you and your loved one with the respect you deserve. Jesse served in the Marine Corps in Desert Storm and understands what it takes to provide loyal, personalized, and empathetic service to those who need it most. The families of Michael Jackson, Brittany Murphy, Ed McMahon, and many others have trusted Jesse to provide them with the highest level of service and support. To work with Jesse, call 909-762-4027, 909-762-4027, or visit their website, www.4pfp.org. www.4pfp as in personalfuneralplanning.org. Jesse Ruiz and Personal Funeral Planning, veteran-owned and operated, helping you plan a personal, lasting tribute for your loved one. www.4pfp.org.
Oh, I wish I was an Oscar Mayer wiener. Hey, this Friday it's TGIF. Thank God it's Frydog. This Friday, November 8th, it's Frydog at the Broadcast Media Services Center, home of KCAA, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, 1050 AM, and home to our cousin radio station, KQLH 92.5. Because it's Frydog. When the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile rolls into our radio station parking lot, we're across the street from Big Lots and Redlands on Industrial Park Avenue. The Wienermobile will be here. Be a great American hot dogger. Join us and Oscar Mayer with their famous Wienermobile. Get your picture with this larger-than-life famous American pop culture icon. Have some fun from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. and get a wiener whistle and all kinds of other prizes, tasty treats, and of course, a free hot dog lunch while supplies last from KCAA and KQLH. Thank God it's Frydog. Get your wiener whistle.
And welcome back. You are tuned to KCAA Radio, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, or you can listen from anywhere in the world at www.kcaaradio.com. This is Viewpoint with Father John, and I am your host, Father John Reed. And by the way, you know, if you want to help support this program, I'd like to invite you to buy a copy of my book, Close Your Eyes So You Can See Me. Those of you watching on YouTube, you can see that on your screen right now, or Ustream, or iHeartRadio even. So get a copy of the book. It's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all your fine online stores. Now, we are coming up to Christmas, and it's not too early to buy for Christmas, either this year, next year, or the year following. Because you never know when you're going to have new relatives, and you don't want to be caught without having one of these books in stock.
Yep.
So yes, that's shameless self-promotion. Shout out to Frank, our sound engineer tonight. How you doing tonight, Frank? With your fancy haircut and all that?
I am doing fan-freaking-tastic. How are you, Father John?
That's pretty good. Doing good. You know, he said to me earlier he liked my haircut too, but it looked like I combed my hair with an egg beater. I don't know what that was all about. Were you being serious, or are you just being mean?
Both.
Yeah, seriously mean. I got you. Okay. All right. Thanks, Frank. I appreciate that. I loved your costume at Halloween. That was great.
Thank you.
What was the name of that character?
It's a famous DJ musician guy called Deadmau5, and I got the giant mouse head from my sisters for my birthday. So
I thought you got all the mousetrap in the bathroom over here.
No.
I wondered how you made it so big. So my guest this evening is a good friend of mine, someone who, I say this with true sincerity, someone I have absolute trust for. And that's why I have him on here, because he's one of the good guys, and that's Jesse Ruiz, a Personal Funeral Planning. Yes, you did hear his commercial during the break. And I'm going to say something that's going to irritate some of my other friends in the funeral business. There's a reason why there's only one funeral establishment that's allowed to advertise on this show, because I trust you. I don't trust everybody in the business, and I know that sounds terrible, but not all funeral homes are equal.
I agree.
And I work with at least 30 of them that call on me to do services, and I'm honored. I did around 200 services last year. And when you do that many services, you find out who's good and who's bad. Now, I'm not saying this to disparage anybody, but I'm saying this to let you know how much I trust Jesse, and I'm not trying to sell him. But you, as my listeners, you know how seriously I take the integrity of my name and of the show. So I just wanted you to know that's what a stand-up guy this person is who's my guest tonight. And I know I'm embarrassing the heck out of him, but when you're the host of the show, you get to do those kind of things.
Thank you, Father. Appreciate it.
So when we went to commercial, we mentioned that we'd like to talk a little bit about pre-need, which I think is a very important thing. I have mine done. And for years I didn't. And the reason I didn't, and some of the listeners may identify with this, it seemed morbid. And when I come to find out it's not morbid, it's loving. Because all of us are going to die. They've discovered the greatest cause of death is birth. Because everyone who's born will die at some point, not to be morbid. And when you're in grief and there's no pre-need, it makes it even more difficult. Now, it's doable, obviously. People do it all the time. But it's a real loving thing to do for your family if everything's in place and they're not having to go through all these emotions and make these decisions at the same time. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. And that's the concern that we have as professionals. The burden falls upon the living, the family members that are left behind. The decedent, I mean, that person's in heaven or wherever it may be. But
or Compton.
Wherever it may be. But again, that person's loved ones, they're the ones that have the burden to come up with the money to pay for the, whether it be the funeral arrangements or whether it be the property. And it does get expensive, and it's so sad when, even as I'm driving down the street and I see families outside with the billboards and, funerals, please help us.
Yeah.
It hurts me. It does hurt. And unfortunately, that's what's going on. That's what happens when somebody's not prepared.
Yeah.
If somebody tells you, hey, it's going to rain tomorrow, are you going to take your umbrella, take your raincoat? Of course you are. You're going to be prepared for that.
I'm Catholic. We don't use raincoats.
Just an example. So, and it's just a matter of being prepared. You're not saying it's going to happen today. It's not going to happen tomorrow, but just being prepared. Even just a standard life insurance will help.
Oh, yeah.
And,
we're in a time right now. I know I sound like a salesman right now, and I don't mean to. But there's some really reasonable life insurance.
Oh, yeah.
You can get, Alex Trebek, $9 a month or whatever it is.
Yeah.
We all think until we reach a certain age, and I'm at that age now, so I know about this a little bit. We feel like we're immortal. Death is not going to hit us until you have a parent die or you have someone close to you die, and then suddenly you realize you're not immortal.
Yeah.
This is going to happen to you as well.
Yes.
And that's a hard pill to swallow. And that's why, if you're thinking about this, I'm talking to the listeners right now. If you're thinking about this, it's worth talking to a professional about what this is. And pre-need people are licensed insurance people. These are not everybody can go and do pre-needs.
Exactly.
It takes licensure. So you have to go through a background check. You have to go through training so you know the laws.
Correct.
And you get an actual license for it. And just because you talk to someone doesn't mean you have to buy something there. But it is good to start gathering some information.
Absolutely.
Because when you're trying to do this at the last moment and you're in agony and it feels like you can't breathe because you're in so much grief right now, and you just realize this person I've spent my whole life with is not here now physically.
Yep.
And you're dealing with that at the same time trying to figure out, what am I supposed to do? Who should I call? What funeral home? And sometimes we wind up having to do that. I've had to do that in cases. But if you already have that worked out, it's just one less agony to go through.
Yes.
So
I agree. Within my organization, I do have a pre-need department. They're called Family Services. Outstanding. My buddy Greg Brock. He's also a former Marine buddy of mine, but he takes care of all my pre-need families. Anybody that calls us with questions, we refer them to them, and they're outstanding as well. So
outstanding. What are some other things that you think would be important information for people who are listening right now about this process? What are things that they should know about the funeral industry that they may not know?
One of the big things touching on pre-need is, let's say you've already made a pre-need arrangement with a particular funeral home.
Right.
And you wanted to go with another funeral home. You can do that. It's absolutely legal. A lot of funeral homes will say, no, you can't do that. But you absolutely can do that. You can totally do that.
And if they tell you can't, that tells you everything you need to know about that funeral home.
Exactly.
And I'm serious about that.
Yes.
They're not all alike. There's a few funeral homes. I'm not going to say them here because we're in California where everyone likes to sue. But there's some I won't be on the clergy list for because they're scoundrels.
Yes. I
and that's why I want you to know about Jesse. I have a few other friends I absolutely trust because it is a noble profession. don't let some of these large corporations lose that sight of that.
Yeah.
You know, you get some of these guys, and I have a handful of them that we've been friends for many, many years. And people come to me and ask, who should I use? Because of ethics, I always give 3 names. One of those names is always Jesse. So
Thank you.
now, I appreciate you. You know, I'm not trying to build you up. You know me enough that if I don't mean it, I don't say it about you. Integrity is not a part-time thing. You either have integrity or you don't.
Absolutely.
It's not situational.
Yeah.
I'm
Can't
sorry, I
learn
get a little
it.
rough
Yeah.
with that, don't I? I take it very serious. You know, I was raised that a man has only one thing of value. That's his word.
Yeah.
If that's no
Absolutely.
good, neither is anything else he has.
Absolutely.
And so I'm old school with that. Now, someone has died. And they either had pre-need or they didn't. But they're coming in to the appointment with you after the death has occurred. What happens?
At that point, we get the initial phone call. We figure out who the legal next of kin is. We figure out where the loved one is.
Mhm.
We'll set up the appointment. At the initial call, we'll tell them, okay, go ahead and bring in Social Security, bring in the parents' information. That's basically all we need. A traditional service will take, the arrangements will take about an hour, hour and a half.
Okay.
A cremation does take about 2 hours, because the reason being is there's way more documentation, paperwork that we
Sure.
have to have by law. But if it's a traditional service, it takes about an hour. We actually sit down, we get all the vital information. We actually start planning the dates for the services at that point. So
Good. And one thing that's important for you to know, mortuary and cemetery are 2 separate things.
Yes.
So they do the mortuary through you. Then they'll need to make accommodations with a cemetery if they're going to
Correct.
bury or put in a niche. And for those who don't know what a niche is, it's a place in a wall where you can put urns. Or it can be in a bench or someplace, but it's just the size for an urn opposed to being able to put a casket in there.
Yes, and that's I'm glad you touched on that. A lot of families think that just meeting with us is it, which is not.
Right.
You're right. There's 2 entities, the cemetery and the mortuary, which is 2 different costs as well.
A thing that is important to know about dealing with cemeteries, you may already have your plot purchased. You need to check if they included the opening and closing, because
Yes.
oftentimes that's a separate charge.
Yes.
And families are shocked because it's an expensive charge.
Yes, it is.
It could be up to $1,000.
Oh, yeah.
Depending on where the cemetery is, who owns it.
Yes.
And so this is good information to have ahead of time, because you may show up and think, well, we already have the plot, and not know, and then suddenly you're hit with this. And if you don't have the money, you might be one of these families, God bless them. God, it has to be painful to stand on the corner with those signs you talked about. Can you help us bury our loved one? What a terrible thing to have to do. You're grieving for your loved one. It's part of it.
Yeah.
It's part of it. And heartbreaking.
It is.
And, you know, not every family's alike coming in. Each family has different needs. Would that be correct?
Absolutely. 100%.
And different personalities.
Yes.
So, and the reason I bring that up is I think it's important for people to know that you don't come at this with a one-size-fits-all approach.
No.
That one of your biggest skills is being a good listener. Would that be an accurate statement?
Yes. You gotta, keep in mind there's different ethnicities, there's different cultural needs, there's different religious beliefs.
Sure.
That you basically, you have to be a great listener and just listen, and you can't, intrude into their beliefs. You just pretty much listen to what they are talking about, and you say, well, this is what I'm listening. This is what you're telling me. What do you think of this? You kind of suggest, and it works both ways. But yes, patience, listening, those are 2 key factors that really they have to be in effect.
And some of the cultural differences and religious differences, you have some religious approaches where you can take a couple weeks. You have some that you have to bury within 24 hours.
Yep.
Judaism,
Yes.
Is his home like that? I don't know.
I believe it is.
I thought it was.
Yes.
And so you have your different clergy that has to be contacted.
Yes.
If you don't know one, oftentimes a funeral director will have a list of people that he trusts and say, I'd like to suggest this person.
Yes.
But it's always up to them as a family. Is that correct?
Correct.
Exactly.
Correct. And they might even have their own clergy.
Right.
So, that's fine. That's perfectly fine. And sometimes I find that even more personal, even for them, because obviously the loved one even knew the clergy or vice versa. So it becomes a more personal service for that family.
Now, do you ever have a family get mad at you because you're trying to arrange the service, but the church is not cooperating?
I would say 99% of the time, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
and folks, if you're listening to this, I want to make it real clear. It's not Jesse's fault. It's not the funeral director's fault. Sometimes churches can be difficult to work with.
Yes.
And you're not always dealing with the clergy. Sometimes you have a staff member who handles all this, a bereavement person.
Correct.
And they speak on behalf of the minister or priest or rabbi, and then you deal with the clergyman, and they have a whole different idea.
Yes.
And the family gets mad at you when you had nothing to do with it.
Yes.
So please know it's not the funeral director doing that.
Yeah. Or we'll make the initial contact. We give them all the information. We'll tell them, okay, we want next week Friday. And they'll get all the information. They'll say, okay, we'll get back to you to confirm. We're like, okay, come next day, 2 days, 3 days later, they won't call. So we have to call them and say, okay, what's going on? We need confirmation. Oh, yeah, by the way, yes, it's confirmed. But it is, just sometimes it's frustrating.
Yeah, and I bring that up because when you're in grief, you don't always realize. You just know you're in pain and everything irritates you.
Yeah. And
that's okay. That's right where you're supposed to be when you're in grief. There's nothing you can do about it. And so, the funeral director is the person sitting in front of you, so they're the ones who get the brunt of it. But I just want to put it out there because a lot of times the families don't know that it's really not the funeral director holding it up. Sometimes it's the church.
Yeah.
Or you have some churches that are really good to work with, easy
absolutely.
to work with.
Oh, yeah.
It all depends. And so it's just good information to have. And if you have a contact with the clergy, sometimes it's helpful as a family if you call them as well. The director's happy to call them for you, but sometimes if you call directly as a family member, they'll cooperate just a little bit more.
Yeah.
Because they're dealing with you directly.
Yes.
and they can't let the funeral director get beat up in their stead.
Yes. Yes.
Can you tell I've been in this thing for a little while?
Yes. The other monkey wrench within the system is all three things need to fall into play. The church has to fall into play. Then the cemetery has to be available to, after the church accommodate the burial. In that we have to get a special permit for the burial.
Right.
So that it comes into play as well. So as the funeral director, planning all this out, that's the little things that you're looking for and making sure everything is being, guided and you're going in the right direction to please this family.
And if you are one of the families, and many families do this, who choose to take the cremated remains home, there's a permit that you have to keep with the remains at all times.
Yes.
And isn't there something you have to show where the remains are going?
On the permit, yeah, it'll state on there. Yeah, it'll state.
That's something you know more about than I do. I just knew from being around it long enough that that's important. So they're not just being technical with you. It's the law.
It's the law, yes.
And so they're not being jerks. Well, we're coming up to our next commercial break. Again, my guest this evening is my dear friend, Mr. Jesse Ruiz of Personal Funeral Planning. And we'll be back into it, too. You're listening to Viewpoint with Father John.
The loss of a loved one is one of the most challenging experiences in a person's life. It's hard to know where to turn to make your loved one's final arrangements. Jesse Ruiz at Personal Funeral Planning in Ontario will treat you and your loved one with the respect you deserve. Jesse served in the Marine Corps in Desert Storm and understands what it takes to provide loyal, personalized, and empathetic service to those who need it most. The families of Michael Jackson, Brittany Murphy, Ed McMahon, and many others have trusted Jesse to provide them with the highest level of service and support. To work with Jesse, call 909-762-4027, 909-762-4027, or visit their website, www.4pfp.org. www.4pfp as in personal funeral planning.org. Jesse Ruiz and Personal Funeral Planning, veteran owned and operated, helping you plan a personal, lasting tribute for your loved one. www.4pfp.org.
Oh, I wish I was an Oscar Mayer wiener. Hey, this Friday it's TGIF. Thank God it's Frydog. This Friday, November 8th, it's Frydog at the Broadcast Media Services Center, home of KCAA, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, 1050 AM, and home to our cousin radio station, KQLH 92.5. Because it's Frydog. When the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile rolls into our radio station parking lot, we're across the street from Big Lots and Redlands on Industrial Park Avenue. The Wienermobile will be here. Be a great American hot dogger. Join us and Oscar Mayer with their famous Wienermobile. Get your picture with this larger-than-life famous American pop culture icon. Have some fun from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. and get a wiener whistle and all kinds of other prizes, tasty treats, and of course, a free hot dog lunch while supplies last from KCAA and KQLH. Thank God it's Frydog. Get your wiener whistle.
And welcome back, friends. You are tuned to KCAA Radio, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, or on the World Wide Web at kcaaradio.com. This is Viewpoint with Father John, and I am your host, Father John Reed. A couple of shout-outs. A shout-out to Gabby, the most wonderful person in the world who's in class tonight. I miss having her at studio. She's also one of our producers. And to Letty, and say hi to the kids.
Bianca, Vincent, Jessica, and Andy. Hi, guys.
One of you has a show T-shirt coming home to you.
Yeah.
So because I heard you are a fan of this show, and so that's my way of saying thank you for tuning in each week. And it is a large shirt, so you have a new night shirt. And because I love you so much, I only charge your dad double. Because I want you to feel how far his love goes. Forgive me, I'm awful. I know. I'm ashamed to just know how to look it. Now, one of the reasons I do this as well is people don't know that funeral directors have a sense of humor. Mm-hmm. Hollywood has not done you any favors.
Oh, not at all. No. And it's funny because I've been in this for about, 25, 26 years. As I was younger, obviously I'm older now, but
that helps.
Yeah. But going to we go to high schools for different business educations or career days, and everybody's in shock. They would see me. They're like, "You're an embalmer? You're a mortician?" I'm like, "Yeah." They're like, "Oh, you don't look nothing like the like the movies. How do they portray the?" Yeah, exactly. I'm like, no, not at all. Not at all. And I've got other coworkers and friends, and we are normal people, and
normal is 98.6.
And we are genuine people, loving people that care for people. That's and you have to have that empathy, honestly, and that respect and that care, because you are in a very special profession.
Well, I remember you, Rick Zook, and myself up at Rick's cabin.
Yeah.
Just having a good time up in Mount Baldy, and you're a wonderful dad, you're a good husband.
Thank you.
And those are important things to know, that you have a life too, because the funeral business is not like a 9 to 5.
No, not at all.
You never know when the phone is going to ring. I'm aware of a certain family that called recently that had you up all night.
Yeah.
Falls several times a night. And that goes with it's almost like the priesthood. When my phone rings, I got to go.
Yeah.
When your phone rings, you got to go. You got to arrange what's called a first call.
Correct.
You want to tell the people what the first call is?
The first call is the initial call that we get from that family member that has lost a loved one. Mm-hmm. They will call us, and it can go either way. Either they're calling for pricing, which is absolutely important for families to do. You need to call around.
Yes.
You need to call minimum 3 funeral homes. get pricing, and tell them, give me the bottom line, everything, because they'll tell you, okay, our cremation is $800. But once you do the arrangements, it comes out to $1,100 because of the add-ons. So before you get stuck in that trap, make those phone calls.
And every funeral home is required to have a general
price list.
Price list.
Yes.
That they must produce for you.
Yes.
Okay. And if they're hesitant, or if they ask you first what someone else is charging you,
not a good thing.
Yeah, and if you see a lot of used cars in the parking lot with for sale signs on it,
not a good place. No.
You and I are probably thinking about the same place.
Yeah. Yeah.
From Fontana, John. There's a few of them.
Behave.
There's a few of them there. But the initials are. No, just kidding. I'm not going to do it. I can't afford it.
No comment.
You think I have a vow of poverty now? Wait till they wait till their attorney calls. So, I'll be broke in my next life.
Yes.
So, that's called karmic debt. So sorry. Forgive us. What are some of the more interesting situations you've had to deal with as a funeral director? I know it's kind of a tough
I've
question.
had a lot. Wow. I just, there's just so many.
I had a crazy call one time.
Yeah.
Out at Green Acres in Bloomington. Those who don't know where Bloomington is, it's just on the other side of the gates of Mars. and where Mars is cold, Bloomington's very hot.
Yeah.
It's where it was the first where they were first going to put hell. So, but they got a better real estate deal somewhere else. Anyhow, but I got a call for a family, and sometimes you get blindsided in these things. And so I show up, it's just a graveside. And the family, the music that they chose was from Nirvana, People Like You Don't Go to Heaven. And the guy died in prison. And nobody had anything good. I'm thinking, why do you have me here? You want to see the holy water boil or steam on the grass or what? And even the guy's best friend said, I was his best friend and he stole my bicycle.
Oh, my goodness.
And I'm looking to the cemetery rep and the funeral director, and we're all looking at each other like, this is a first for all of us. And, so you never know what you're going to walk into.
Yeah.
Because funerals either bring out the best of people or the worst of people. And I've had some people that were just incredibly wonderful people. And I've had some people that I thought, I hope we're at least 2 towns away from each other. Maybe a couple counties. Because some people are mean-spirited.
Yeah.
And I've seen some things. So one of the things I think you have to deal with quite a bit in some families, talking about bringing out the best or worst, is sometimes family dynamics.
Absolutely, yeah.
And you can have a family feud over what to us would seem silly, but to them at the moment it's very important.
Yeah.
And how do you deal with something like that?
Honestly, it's just patience. Patience. You at all times, especially when you're doing the service, especially when you're in front of them, you just need to be professional. Once you get back to the office, back at home, when you're in private, then you just pull your hairs out, or if you need to yell, whatever you got to do, But in front of the families, you must always keep your composure.
Yeah.
Which is hard. It's hard sometimes,
Yeah, and each family is that much different. We've been on a lot of services together where it's been very solemn. Mm-hmm. We've been on some where they've been jovial. Mm-hmm. I had one family that called me that the person was a professional entertainer in Hollywood, and they wanted comedy included.
Nice.
With the sharing, and not everybody can do that.
Yeah.
And sacrilege is always that which is different than our custom. Mm-hmm. And so what may be sacrilege to one might be simple tradition to another.
Exactly.
Or comfort to another.
Yeah.
And so I put that out there because whatever it is for you who's walking through this, it's okay to be flexible and allow who you are to be. And the funeral director's there to help you go through this, not to judge you through it.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a great point of view of stating that. Yes, absolutely.
I just think it's important for some of the listeners to hear about that. Now, I warned you today. We're on a funeral together today, by the way.
This morning.
And we're talking about tonight a little bit. And the reason I did the funeral was so I can grab him by the collar and drag him all the way out here to Redlands. Make sure he didn't skip out or turn chicken or something. So that's an inside joke for someone who's in the studio. But I told him that I told you I was going to ask you this question because we've both had some paranormal experiences.
Yeah.
Would you be willing to share one or two experiences you've had as a funeral director? Because these things happen. People say it's gaga stuff until you have your experience and you find out, oh, no, it's not.
No, it isn't. And honestly, I mean, there are some unexplainable things that are out there, you know.
Yeah.
And I've had several. You know, and
my
it's
brother's
funny.
wife is one of them. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
In fact, I was thinking today after our conversation we had earlier. Honestly, it's been a while. It's been a couple of years since I've had any sightings, you know, per se. But the main things that would happen to me that I would see would be children or elderly people. I would, see something at the corner of my eye, and I would turn directly to see what was there, and I would see them hide behind a wall or a car or whatever it may be. But honestly, it's been a couple of years since I haven't had anything, but that was more prevalent than anything else.
Remember when I was living at the top of Indian Hill?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That house was extremely haunted.
Really?
In fact, one time Gabby and I were sitting there, and we saw this little kid peek around the corner. There was no kids in that house.
Yeah.
It was just she and I. And I looked at her and said, "Did you see that?" She said, "You mean the little kid, the little boy?" I said, "Yeah." She says, "Yeah, I saw it." Looked around the corner at us. But we actually had something that at night, it sounded like someone was dragging a desk through the attic. Well, it's just a little crawl space. There's nothing up there I thought, maybe rats or something.
Yeah.
Now, mind you, I'm a trained exorcist. You think I put together, but you don't think about the place you're living in.
Yeah.
And so it would be dragging us, and it's loud as could be. And that's one of the things that they can do is make sounds without actually moving anything. And then Gabby would be up about 4 o'clock in the morning, and she'd go to do stuff on her computer, and the computer would come on by itself. And then she would think I'm in the kitchen because she'd hear the drawers open and close, the pitter-patter of the feet on the floor. I'm asleep in the bedroom. And that we finally put together because she came in, and her son came and was staying with us, and was actually attacked.
Oh, my goodness.
And terrified him, absolutely terrified him. And we had a few people had experiences at the house. There's more than what we see with our eyes.
Yes.
And I share with you guys today at the, both you and the young chicken we're talking about, who didn't come on the show tonight, who I'm being a real jerk to at the moment, that I had actually been dangled off the ground by something invisible when I was doing a house blessing. And I've also had things disappear and reappear. I had gone on a call I shouldn't have before doing a retreat over at Sarah. And at the end of the retreat, I couldn't find my favorite rosary. It's a Franciscan rosary. Now, this was several months ago. This week, you're going to think I'm kidding, but I'm being very serious. I want to preface this. This is gospel truth. I was doing my morning prayer and meditation. And, I know we're not supposed to hang on to physical things, but sometimes we do. And I was saying, that was my favorite rosary. God, I wish I could have that again. I walked in my bedroom, and there it is on my dresser.
Wow.
It wasn't there. It wasn't anywhere in the house when I left the retreat out in Malibu.
Wow.
In fact, they were looking all around the retreat house for it because they knew how important it was to me.
Yeah.
I mean, I was going to drive all the way back out to Malibu to pick it up. I mean, it's my favorite.
Wow.
I do prayer with that.
Yeah.
And so this last week, after saying that deep prayer, to God, and not expecting anything, and then I walked in, and it's sitting right there, and it wasn't there all these months.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a place where maybe someone's. It was in a clear spot where there was nothing there. So things happen. And some things know how to make things disappear and reappear. Now, there's some people listening to this saying, "Oh, I don't know about that." Well, you know what? There's a lot of documentation now, and we're learning there's more and more programs, particularly on A&E and Travel Channel, are doing all these documentaries now of paranormal experiences. And one reason people get tormented so much is they're afraid to say anything. Look, life is life. It's eternal. And I had Archbishop Gabriel on here 2 weeks ago, and he was talking about what Pope John Paul II told him, that each conception is a conception into eternity. That's really powerful when you think about it. From the moment you're conceived, you are a creation through eternity. You will never not be.
Yeah. Wow.
So I remember you told me one time about a case you were on. It was a teenage kid. I think it was your first paranormal experience.
It was.
And I think the kid had been in a
car accident
and was tore up pretty bad.
Yeah.
You want to tell the story?
Sure. Actually, I was doing my apprenticeship at that time, and a young kid had gone through the windshield, had massive facial reconstruction I had to work on. It was about 1, 2 in the morning, and I know you're thinking, oh well, he was tired, embalming, whatever. But I was in my full senses. So I was embalming. I looked in front of me, maybe about 8 feet. There was a doorway, and I look over there, and I could see the silhouette of a human. I didn't see the face, but I could see the head, the shoulders, and it was pure white, like this smoky figure. I'm like, wow. And at that point, I felt this tremendous love, like this just happiness, just joy. And I was not scared. I thought I'd be scared, but I was not scared. So I took my mask off. I took everything. I'm rubbing my eyes. I'm like, I'm tired. I look, and the person is still there.
There.
Yeah. So I'm like, okay, well, I guess it's the spirit, and okay, I'm gonna keep working because I still had a lot to do. And literally, so I had my instruments like right next to me. So I go down to get my instruments, and they're gone. So I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe they slid down the table. I'm looking all around the table. I look underneath the table, nothing. So I look at the image, it's still there. I'm like, okay. And then I look at so I'm still concerned about my instruments, but then towards the foot end or towards my right, there's a counter, and the instruments were on the counter versus where I had them next to me on the table.
Like the rosary.
Yes, exactly. So I realized, okay, yeah, this is true. I'm not dreaming. It's not fantasy. This is happening. And,
one of the gifts of being a priest is I've had a lot of people share their stories with me. And the reason they shared their stories with me was they wanted to make sure they weren't crazy.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, and we're in our last couple of minutes here, but the whole reason I went through training to be an exorcist was because I didn't put any stock in that stuff. But I thought, I'll go check it out. And I am a true believer. I've been dangled off the ground by invisible stuff. I've been scratched. I've been smacked, and not just by ladies in a bar. I mean, things I couldn't see. I had to beat Jesse that one. I saw the look in his eyes. He's going to throw me under the curb. So, well, look, we're coming to the end of this right now. But if people want to get a hold of you, how do they do that?
A couple of ways. My phone number, it's 909-762-4027. That's my cell phone directly.
Say that a little bit slower.
Yes, 909-762-4027. That's my direct phone number, or the company phone number. You can visit our website at www.4pfp.org as well. So.
Fantastic. Well, my guest tonight has been Jesse Ruiz, my dear friend, with Personal Funeral Planning. And if no one told you this week that they love you, let me be the first. And thank you for spending another hour with Viewpoint with Father John. We'll be back next week. God bless.
Thank you, Father.